Hello, it's Tony here again, and we're back. We're back in another aircraft, and this time it's the Cessna 310. It's one that I've been working on for a while, and now's the time to finally show what I've been up to over these many weeks and months. It's one that has been a bit of a slow burner, this one. I've kind of been tinkering away at it in the background, and now I've finally finished off the last few bits. I've had lots of bits working for a while. I've been flying with them, the makeshift version of the 310 for a while, so it's not stopped me really flying it, but it's not had all the polish and every last little instrument and detail, as you know I like to do with the experimental sim avionics panels. So now I've added all of that, I guess without further ado we should go jump in the aircraft and have a look at the panels. And there they are. This is the PMS GTN variant that I'm flying with today, but there is a TDS GTN XI variant, a GNS variant, and just a regular old radio navigation panel, which is just your normal Navcom type radios, audio panel, transponder, etc. So just the same radio setups that you get in the Milviz 310 for Microsoft Flight Sim. We've got Air Manager panels for each one of those different variants, and as I said, today we're going to fly with the PMS GTM variant. So I guess what we'll do is we'll you know, the usual thing as we normally do. We take a bit of fly. You get to see the panels in action. This is a little bit more detailed, being a twin and a little bit bigger than perhaps some of the light singles that we've had a look at recently. But nevertheless, it's still Air Manager panels and pretty much mostly native instruments. Actually, it's only really the GTNs or the GNSs that need actually to be popped out of the sim. So we'll go ahead and put the panel. You see the crash bars there are working. We'll put our mags on as well while we're there. We'll just check our fuel. Checked our fuel selectors there, and we're checking our main and tanks and auxiliary tank levels. Yep, we're looking okay there, certainly for the short flight that we're planning to do today. Now I've noticed that this aircraft, let's put the prop lever in and we'll get ready, the prop levers. We'll get ready with the mixtures. So what we'll do is we'll start. I've noticed that this aircraft does need quite a bit of priming, so we will prime for a bit. Doesn't always. I guess it depends on outside air temperature and other factors. I'll leave it to prime for a bit, and then we'll try for a start on the right engine. It's always the right that's it's always the right that takes longer to kick in for some reason. I'm going to prime for a bit more. There we go. Finally got it to kick into gear. Maybe didn't quite have the throttle cracked open enough, so I'll just increase that just a little bit. Got 1000 RPM there. That should do for the moment. We'll stick that right alternator on. And then the same on the left side. Bit of a prime. There we go, the left's normally a bit easier than the right. Even if you do it the other way around, the left still seems to start a bit easier than the right. Turn the other alternator on. Should have really had my anti-collision light on. Not following any checklists here. We'll stick our taxi on while we're here. And the Avionics master. We don't need any maybe we do. The temperature's around about just under 10, maybe about 8 degrees C, so we might need the pitot heat once we get airborne, but we'll leave it off for now. Okay, so we've got the choice here. If I can just pull it up quickly, let's see if we can do that in the sim. I could have popped it out actually, because you can. This is one of the good aircraft that they allow you to pop out the tablet. The damn tablets, I'm not a big fan of them, simply because I'm not a big fan of trying to manipulate my way around the virtual cockpit. I don't find it that user friendly really, so I don't like having to, you know, change view, move around, use the mouse to move. Or, I mean, I know you can have track IR and whatnot, but still you have to then turn it on and off for certain scenarios. I just prefer to look out, use the main monitor to look out as if it were the main windshield, and I use the Air Manager instrument panels as the instruments. And then obviously you can supplement that by having side monitors to give you a bit more peripheral vision for the general you know, immersion of the flight simulator. So yeah, using the tablet is not one of my greatest loves, and certainly not when you have to rely on the tablet to go flying or to set certain things up like you do have to do in some aircraft. So it's a bit of a pet hate of mine. If I can, the good developers, if they expose some of the events or variables that they're using in the tablet, then you can circumvent them to a certain extent, and you can either program an Air Manager switch or Stream Deck if you've got one, or, you know, a button on your joystick to do some of the functions if you don't like having to use the tablet. So the thing I was going to demonstrate quickly here was that you notice we've got the Asobo G5 tick there on the tablet. I don't know if you can quite see that, but it's where I'm sort of hovering over with my mouse here at the moment. And when we turn that off, you'll see what happens with the Air Manager panels is they will actually also change. You see now, so we've got the a normal AH and HSI there in the 310, and so we have on the Air Manager panels here. And then when we turn the G5s back on, you see you get G5s back in the virtual cockpit and G5s on the Air Manager panels. So that's a nice little feature. That's something that we can look at the variable of whether that's set or not, and we can show either option depending on what you've got set there. So if your preference is flying for one or the other, whatever you leave that set to. And the same with the radio options, they don't appear automatically. You have to actually load those panels, but you're less likely to want to change those, I think. So yeah, that's the automatic G5 entry. Now you do need to have, these are the Sim Innovations G5s, very nice little units indeed, so you would still need to own the Sim Innovations G5s, and if you don't own the Sim Innovations G5s, then toggling that function on and off won't make the G5s obviously appear on the Air Manager panels. They'll still appear in your virtual cockpit, but they won't appear on the Air Manager panels. You will still obviously have the ability to use the standard attitude indicator and the HSI that you just saw when we turned the G5s off. So that's a nice little feature if you've got the Sim Innovations G5, or if you haven't, it's a good reason to get the Sim Innovations G5, because they go quite nicely in this aircraft, as they do many others too. So I guess without further ado, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other features of the panels and whatnot once we get underway. But I think for now, what I think we'll do is we'll turn that parking brake off and we'll try and make our way out. to the runway. So we're at Bournemouth Airport on the south coast of the UK at the moment. And we'll take off from here and we'll have a short flight. See where it takes us. This is a reasonably large airport, this. Fly to a lot of holiday type destinations from here. Serves quite a large population down on the south coast of England. The next nearest airport of this sort of size or larger is probably Southampton, which is, you know, by air not very far, but let me tell you, it's a fair old drive. Well, not a massive drive, but a fair distance. And lots of traffic as well. So I'm just going to backtrack here. If what I spied on that windsock was correct, I think what we're doing is the right thing. So while we're backtracking, I suppose it's a good opportunity to just have a quick talk about these general panels that I haven't spoke about already in terms of the variants and the configurations that I've kind of spoke about. So you've got the usual left and right sided panels. You can see the main switches and whatnot along the bottom edge of the left hand side panel there. So it kind of in the 310 the left of the two switch panels, you can see in the middle there where the mouse pointer is still hovering over the park brake there where I touched it. That's the park brake in the middle there. And so the panel on the left there is usually on the side wall of the 310, but obviously, you know, we haven't got a touch monitor there on the side. I mean, you could, I guess, move it onto another monitor if you wanted to, but it sort of kind of makes sense to put it down at the bottom there on the left to denote that that's the left side one, and then the other switch panel that is at the lower part of the instrument panel, the main electrical switch panel, is the one that you see on the right there with the crash bars and the masters and the alternator switches and whatnot. So that is oops, a bit squirrely here. That is the layout of the switches on the left side panel, and then you've got you know, your normal flight instruments on the left hand side, and your engine instruments on the right hand side, with kind of a radio stack split between the two left and right side panels. So half of it on the left, as you can see, the GTN 750. We ain't going to need all this runway here, so I don't think we'll bother taxiing or backtracking all the way down to the end. We'll do a turn around here, that should be ample for us. I know they say take all the runway, but I've seen a 747 take off and land from here before, so it's plenty long enough. There we go. Right, so let's put that park brake on just temporarily. We'll stick our landing light on, which we should have had on already. Turn our taxi off. We'll stick our strobe on as well. Again, we should have had that on already. And we'll just open the cabin airs a little bit. cam flaps are already open. We haven't got them pulled to close them. We'll leave them probably open. So temperatures and pressures are in the green. Idling a little bit low there. Turn our transponder on. Okay, we're ready to go. Don't forget to notch your flaps. Turn the park brake off and away we go. There we go, we're up already.
Leaving altitude.
Gear up. And flaps up too. So we'll stick the autopilot on now. Got a little, I think I did put something in the GPS to head us over towards Southampton, but we'll see whether or not we get there or not, as to whether or not we bother to land. As usual, I'll give you a little bit of background behind the rest of the panel, I guess why we do that. While we're climbing up to our altitude of 4,000 feet, we're not going to go very high. I'm just going to turn the volume down a little bit there with that engine noise. Hopefully that's not too loud for you.
Altitude.
1,000 foot away from our assigned altitude, or our selected altitude in this case. Well, looks like we're getting a little bit of cloud here. We might have to go either a bit higher or a bit lower. We'll see how we go on the rest of the route. Don't like the fact that the GTN for some reason is not showing the magenta line. That might be because I've not updated to the latest version. It would normally show there, so I'll have to check that and make sure. I think that's just a me thing. I've not seen that happen before. That might have been a flight plan loading thing while I was prepping for the flight and wasn't paying enough attention to the flight plan load. Anyway, that's just a GTN issue, I believe. So the panels, the rest of the panels, well, I guess, you know, there's a bit to say about some of the things, but it's the usual six pack as we can see there on the left hand side panel. So airspeed on the left, altitude on the right. Below those, turn coordinator and the vertical speed indicator, and obviously plumb in the middle. We've got the G5s, but I showed the non-glass versions of those just before we took off, while we were still messing about on the ground. But obviously you've got your attitude, or your PFD, if you like, of your G5 and your HSI version at the bottom there, just as you would have laid out with the mechanical gauges there. There's some enunciators below that, so you've got de-ice pressure, turn and bank failure, and a low voltage annunciator. You may have seen some of the annunciators on. There's a few others. All these annunciators as well. I'll just demonstrate this, but you can touch them and you see they illuminate as you touch them. Same with some of these other ones. Some of them are different colours. They're like a red or an ambery type colour. You see there on some of them. I won't touch them all, but you can do it with pretty much every single annunciator. They're one of those sort of touch type annunciators that have that feature about them, just so you can test that the lamp is okay. So that's implemented, and of course they'll come on in the event of the failure condition being met as well. And then below the annunciators on that left hand side panel is a nav 1 and 2 select switch, so you can select the navigation source, and then below, I guess, the main 6-pack instruments, we've got some more instruments. We've got the EDM 800s. Then they're not laid out in exactly the same configuration as they are in the virtual cockpit in the aeroplane, just simply because of the space and the way that the panel had to be arranged out. But I think I've made a nice compromise there. Of course, you could change the positions of the instruments if you wanted to, but the two EDMs, one for each engine, so that the right and the left one orientated so that they represent the information from each engine. And they've got the EDM 800's got the lean fine functionality built into it as well, so you can mess about with your mixtures and get your you can find your richer peak and whatnot with the lean fine function that's built into that, using see there's two little black buttons, so that's your step and your lean find button. So you can use that to automatically step through the parameters as it's doing at the moment. You can see it's automatically stepping through each of the cylinders, or you can halt that and just do it manually using the step button with a single tap, or then you've got the lean find function with the lean find button. So yeah, you need to sort of know how that works in terms of pressing the button, so I'm going to include that information in the manual, so you've got a reference at least there for how that is operated. And then above the two EDM 800s is or the ones we haven't spoke about, there's a CDI there for your number 2 navigation source, and then above that a DMA indicator as well. Tuned obviously from the nav radio, and then an analog clock at the top. Now there is an analog clock on the right hand side in the virtual cockpit, but I didn't repeat. One you always haven't always got space unless it's a very, very simple aircraft to have lots of flight instruments on the other side as well, and they're just repeats and they're showing the same data, so there's not like they're independent. There's not often two sets of different data. Sometimes you might get that with an altimeter or something, but it's really not a lot of point in showing two lots of data like that. So there's only one of each of the main flight instruments, even though there are a couple of them have got a secondary one on the right hand side panel for the co-pilot. And then on the right hand side of the left panel, obviously is your primary nav stack area, and then your secondary nav stack area is on the left side of the right panel. So you can see they're kind of a collection on the monitor. On the display there, it looks like one big panel, which is of course how I'd recommend having them arranged with the two monitors butted right up next to one another. If you get a nice slim bezel to your monitors, there are a few if you search around. I've got a couple of Dell touchscreen monitors that have a nice thin bezel on them, so when they're butted up close together you don't get very much at all with the thickness of the two bezels butted up next to one another down the middle at all. And it's actually particularly when it's a dark area like it is on this panel, it's really not that noticeable, and it kind of adds to the immersion of you having a full instrument panel there. Below the radio areas we'll talk about the left side panel, seeing as that's the one we're finishing up with here, is the landing gear switch, the annunciations for the landing gear. Then you've got a little volts and amps panel, which is a little meter there, so you can look at the left and right alternator currents, the battery current, and of course the voltage as well. And then, as I showed earlier, just the alternator failure lights. You may have noticed them being on when we started, before we started and switched, got the engines running and switched the alternators on, and they cleared out. So yeah, that was I guess the left side panel. So I guess it's time, before we start talking about the right side panel, is just to see roughly where we are. Oh, okay. Well, let's go back. Let's go. So let's turn back to whence we came. Well, not fully, but let's head back in that general direction before we go too far out. And I think we might descend a little bit as well. This weather is looking a bit I'll just come down 1,000 foot and see how we get on. Okay, so the right side panel. Well, you saw me fiddling with the autopilot there, so there's an autopilot, and the autopilot's not always on that right side panel. I think in the GTN XI configuration, it's actually on the left side panel. But in this configuration, it's on the right side panel, and I think most of the others too. Only because I think the GTN XI has got two 750s in it, so there's not really space there. Yeah, because I think there's an ADF and yeah. Anyway, so you got it's basically the Air Manager panel set is mirrors what's in the virtual cockpit. So whatever you've got in the virtual cockpit for that configuration, the Air Manager panel will have the corresponding set of avionics for the radio stack laid out in the same configuration in terms of what units there are and what side they are. I think that's the way it is anyway. Anyway, you've got exactly the same instruments or the radios and whatnot for each of the configurations, so you can operate either one of the four configurations that we spoke about at the beginning with these panel sets. So you get the four complete different panel sets, and I think that totals up to about 7 different panels in total. I think there's one panel that is shared between a couple of the configurations for one of the sides. I think it's one of the right side panels is shared between, I think, configuration 1 and 2, which I think is the GNS and the radio nav. Anyway, it's all going to be written down in the manual which one is which. It's fairly straightforward. If you want to fly this PMS version, then you just need the PMS left and the PMS right. If you want to fly the TDS, you need the TDS left and the TDS right. You want to fly the radio navigation 1, 2. You get the idea. So below the radio stack items on that right side panel, you've got your flaps, switch and indicator. There's a cabin heat switch, and there's an overheat annunciator with that. There's a couple of low fuel annunciations as well for your main tank, and then, as you saw me fiddling with before we got going, there's some cabin and defrost controls, whatnot there on the lower part of that panel. And then just before we go up to the engine instruments, along that bottom part of the panel, you can see there we've got the trim indicator, we've got the alternate airs left and rights, and the cow flap left and right thing, so you can see we can operate the cow flap there. And then, of course, you've got a rudder trim and a aileron trim as well. Sorry, it's rudder trim at the top, as it says nose. So there's your rudder. Here's your rudder trim. That's your aileron trim there at the bottom. And then a little Hobbs meter on the very right-hand side of that bottom lower panel. And you saw me use the pop-up fuel selector as well. There is one other pop-up on that panel, which we'll just talk about quickly at the top. There's a little pop-up overhead panel, and that's just for the lights and the dimmer. So you've got 2 dimmers there. You got a dimmer across the top, which is in like a horizontal configuration. You can just see the arc because it's kind of hidden under the panel there in the bottom left corner of another one. So they're just like little scrolls. You just touch on them and scroll them, and that'll control the white and the red overhead lights, and that's reflected in the Air Manager panels as well here. So if, for instance, you turn the red light on, you'll get like a red hue on the Air Manager panels. It's not that noticeable during the day, but at night, obviously, when it's quite dark out and you want some illumination on the panels, there is that option to have the I don't like the red one that much, but anyway, it's implemented in the panels. The white one's probably more useful because it gives you an illumination over the panel itself. And then, obviously, above them, it's the engine cluster, or the set of engine instruments. There's manifold pressure on the top left. You've got a 3-in-1 engine instrument, very similar to any of you that have got the 414. Some of these instruments are very similar to the 414. I guess they're kind of the 310 and the 414 Cessnas are kind of a similar era. So you can see that they're not exactly the same instruments, but they're similar, probably made by the same manufacturer, and obviously just scaled and marked accordingly for the configuration of the 2 different aircraft. But again, very similar 3-in-1 type engine gauges there that you see in the 414. Same with the RPM, same with the dual fuel indicator. That's very similar to the 414 as well. Additionally, I guess in this aircraft you've got the the switch between main and auxiliary, or indicated when it's in this rest position. It's what's the selected tank. So if you change the selection on the fuel selector, then the needles will move accordingly for whatever tank is selected. That's the rest position of the switch, and then you can force the switch up to the main position or down to the auxiliary position, and the needles will reflect whether you're in main or auxiliary. And then to the right of that, a dual EGT gauge, and then below the or in the third row down, if you like, on it all on its own, is the fuel flow dual. All of those are well, the ones that look like they've only got one needle, they're dual ones. You can see the R there, just visible on the manifold pressure, the RPM, and the fuel flow gauge. Those three there, all in the vertical line there, and obviously there's a left needle behind there as well. Obviously, yeah, both of our engines are running pretty much the same at the moment, so the needles, as you would expect, would be overlapped. But obviously, if you was in a single engine operation, you would only see one of those needles be way different to the rest. So I'm not sure where I'm going here, but we're kind of head back inland a little bit, kind of flown out over the we're over the Isle of Wight now. For those of you that know this area or recognise it, this is the Isle of Wight that we're flying over at the moment. You can see that island just on the GPS map there, and where we're not directly pointing at, but just sort of at about our 11 o'clock position there, that is down by you can just see there's a waypoint there, NEDUL, Nidul. That's heading down towards what is known as the Needles. That's the location down at a place called Allen Bay, where they have all the coloured sand. It's quite famous for that. Lots of cliffs and erosion going on there, and lots of different coloured sands, and so they sell all the touristy type stuff for the coloured sand down in that area. Just a completely un-aviation related bit of useless trivia. So yeah, I guess to round out the right side panel, then we've just got two last instruments, which are the vacuum gauge for the instruments that are running on vacuum, and I've got a couple of little annunciator lights to let you know if you've lost vacuum on either side, and an OAT gauge. Now we are down at about 0, and I didn't switch that pitot heat on, but I really should have earlier. We did speak about it and I completely forgot again because I'm not following a checklist here. But we'll switch it on now just in case, and I guess we'll prep to see if we can find somewhere to land. It looks like we've kind of got a bit of a flight plan here. I don't know what the hell was going on, but we'll have to probably do a manual approach to land, but we'll see. Hopefully we've got enough visibility we can make our way into, I think it's Southampton. I would say sit back and enjoy the view, but the view is not that great, is it, with this weather? But yeah, I do like to leave it on live weather. I perhaps should have tidied it up a little bit, but hopefully it'll be a little bit better as we descend. Although it looks like Southampton's probably a little bit worse than Bournemouth. Either that, or if we flew back to Bournemouth, it might be just as bad. Maybe this is coming off the sea. Didn't bring our landing lights in. We wasn't really up at any high altitude, so we're okay. Got our landing lights on. We can at least see the ground, so we're not doing too bad. Slowing down a little bit now. Should get us reasonably close. See a cruise ship there. This is Southampton. So not unexpected. It's where a lot of the cruises from the UK leave from. This visibility is making it a little bit tricky. Looks like the St Mary's football ground just there on the left hand side, just disappearing out of shot as we're on the approach here into Southampton. Put our gear down.
Leaving altitude.
There we go, I can see it now. Peering out of the dusk, or a little high. Still quite a bit high, but we've got plenty of runway here. There we go, that's better. Ooh, a little bit bumpy there. Hold her off. Ooh, a bit squirrely as well. That's the wind and the ground handling in Microsoft Flight Sim for you. That wasn't major, but it was enough. Ooh. Very sensitive. Those pedals are not normally as sensitive as that. Anyway. Here we are. Welcome to Southampton. Also down on the, I was just going to say sunny south coast there, but it's not that sunny at all. But here we are anyway. At Southampton on the short flight from Bournemouth. And the more important thing is we got to have a look at the Cessna 310 instrument panels from Experimental Sim Avionics. Hopefully they'll be in the store not too long from now. I'm not sure where I'm heading here, but I think I'll take the opportunity here to park up. Oh yeah, there we go. There's a parking area. I think there's more than just this here. This seems a bit sparse and barren to me. It's obviously not modelled. It's not the main terminal over near where the railway is, but it's still on the airfield, and there would be more than this here, I think. Oh, maybe not. This will do us. Okay. We'll put our parking brake on. Turn our avionics off. Bring our landing lights up. And our PO heater can come off now as well. Bring those mixtures back, cut the engines. And then we can bring the crash bars down to turn all the power off. And there we go. Forgot the fuel. There we go. And even the G5s need powering off as well. Just hold the button in on those for a few seconds. Here we go. And there we go. So there we go. It was cold and dark to cold and dark in the Cessna 310 with the Air Manager panels from Experimental Sylvania Avionics. That's about it, I guess. If there's any questions, of course, you can put them down in the comments, but these panels should be coming to the store sometime soon. We just need to do an upload to the store and get that all configured, and that takes a day or two. And so yeah, probably sometime maybe next week or maybe in a few days you should see it appear in the store, but there'll be an announcement on Discord as per usual. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye for now.